Welcome in, everybody, to Betting Pros. It's time to place your bets. It is me, Joey P, Joe P. Zapia, and the NFL Draft is just days away now. We've been so excited. We've done so many mock draft shows over on Fantasy Pros. And, of course, don't forget, on Fantasy Pros, Night 1, Night 2 of the NFL Draft, we will be live. Join us 7 Eastern for the NFL Draft coverage with myself and my guest today, the man, the myth, the legend, the Minnesota madman himself, Thor Nystrom, the great draft connoisseur that you are, and he's going to help us today with some wagers for the NFL Draft. And make sure when you're making your wagers, you're using the Betting Pros app. Download it if you haven't. Sync your sportsbook, and I'm telling you right now, it's going to help you become a better sports bettor. And Thor, there's nobody better when it comes to betting in college sports, whether it be we're talking about the college football combine, we're talking about college in-season stuff, but this is the NFL Draft. This is all you live for. This is all you eat, sleep, and drink for the last, I don't know, 3 months, it feels like. So, Thor, we're ready to break down, and I got to tell you right now, we're going to start here with the breakdown of J.J. McCarthy, because we've talked a lot about J.J. McCarthy, and we've talked a lot about your Minnesota Vikings potentially taking him. So let's start with your favorite bets, and let's start with the Michigan QB.
We'll dive right in. It's too bad that they didn't drop slot props back in February when he was seen as a round 2 pick, but I still think that JJ McCarthy is bettable right now with where the betting odds are. You go to the Betting Pros app, look around at the best odds that you can find in the marketplace, shop around, which you can find those on the Betting Pros app, that the best odds that you can find out there. Right now, live, JJ McCarthy to be the number 3 overall pick, you can get that at 4-1. So that, I think there is some meat on the bone there. You want to go a little bit longer shot, but a more conventional bet there. JJ McCarthy, his slot prop at under 5.5, you have to pay minus 140, but I certainly think that there is value there. There's been smoke around the Patriots slot at number 3 that they could consider him. There's been rumors of the Commanders slot at number 2 that they could be interested in JJ. And of course, the trade possibilities at 4 and 5 as well. Those would be in play for JJ McCarthy as well. The Vikings are out there. They are out there publicly with their interest in trading up to acquire a quarterback. JJ McCarthy is a fit in Kevin O'Connell's offense, obviously, as well. So JJ McCarthy, I'm going under that 5.5. And I also, to take the long shot, would go the 4-1 at the number 3 slot.
All right, let's get to the next set of bets here for first cornerback taken and first defender taken. You have a strong opinion on this. Let's talk about Quinyon Mitchell.
This is another combo one for me. Quinyon Mitchell, the first cornerback off the board, that's the more conventional one at conventional odds. Quinyon Mitchell, I'm going to take that one at minus 125 juice. But the longer shot one, and this is even longer, the longer shot bet, but I like this one at 15-1 odds, the first defender off the board, Quinyon Mitchell. The guy that I am fading for first defender off the board is Dallas Turner, who is the favorite at minus money against the entire board. We'll see if I'm proven wrong on this. I disagree with that. Dallas Turner is my third edge defender on my board. I think that there are some holes in his game that maybe the draft media is maybe not acknowledging quite as much in deference for his athletic profile. And furthermore, the Falcons are obviously at the very top of the board. It's going to go offense, offense, offense. Is what we've been talking about this entire time. The Falcons is that first stop where we start to talk about defense. And it's like sort of in the free spot when people consider that, assuming that the first 3 receivers are already off the board at that time, where it's been the edge defender, invariably Turner, which the betting odds, they generally just go with what the mock drafts out there. They're being informed by that because that's where the betting action goes. And that's how it typically goes with these sorts of things. But Dallas Turner has been the popular one because he has been the top edge on a lot of these boards out there by a lot of my media brethren. I'm not so sure that Atlanta ends up going edge. And even if they did, who knows if they end up going Turner. Like I said, they might go cornerback. And if they do, like I said, I believe that they would go Quinyon Mitchell at 15-1. I think those are pretty incredible odds. And also, beyond that, I think Latu is pretty decent odds there. He has come way, way down. The market was correct, I think, in that. He started out, I don't have the odds right in front of me, but he was way juicy. He has come down to like 3.5 to 1 currently. That one is just a bet on, did NFL teams get decent news on his medicals at the NFL Combine? He is the best edge defender in this class if the team's medical personnel are reasonably confident in the news that they got back on that. He was absolutely incredible the past couple of years, and the athletic profile as well, in conjunction with the pass rushing profile, which is all over his film, is just absolutely stupid. He is a safer bet than Dallas Turner, and certainly is qualitatively several levels above him right now. That would be the other one you could look at. And one other just sort of long shot in this vein, I think right now, that is gaining a bit of steam late to potentially sniff around at, if that's your prerogative, would be Byron Murphy.
All right, Byron Murphy in there too. So, this being, you kind of dropped out that the Atlanta Falcons would be that team there. Would you be also wagering for the Atlanta Falcons to take a defensive player as well, since obviously that seems to be the way that you're focusing?
Yeah, I mean, so this comes down to, do you believe that the three wide receivers will be off the board first? Because I think, there could be a consideration for potentially, of course, they did fortify the wide receiver room in the offseason and bringing in Cousins. They certainly wanted to do that. I do think their prerogative would be on the defensive side of the ball, but I think that cornerback is more in play than people are giving it credit for. Again, it's just been like, oh, the Falcons are going to take the top edge guy right there. I don't think that is a fixed outcome that people believe it is.
All right, so maybe it's just safer if you're trying to, just kind of get a better idea of bet wise. Would it be just better to bet on the defensive player at a lower odds, maybe, and just kind of lock that in because it's going to be one of those guys, or like let's say one of those receivers drops down to them somehow. Do you think that they would still jump into that pool with the needs that they have on defense?
Well, the other possibility there is a trade down at that point, right?
Sure.
Like if, for instance, like a guy like a Dunze, you just think, suss out this outcome with me. A Dunze falls down there, for instance, you are going to be getting a lot of phone calls while you are on the clock. And let's say indeed that the Falcons have isolated the buckets of edge rusher and cornerback as the top priorities of immediate help on their roster. If you could just drop down between 3 to 7 spots and hit that, you might consider that. And by the way, maybe if you could only drop down a couple spots, even more still, you might still have the number one, your choice of those two buckets. I can tell you for sure, I know one team that super duper fetishizes Rome Odunze behind closed doors that I've heard is the New York Jets. And so if they were in a position to swoop in, if Rome Odunze somehow started to fall through the cracks and they had that opportunity to jump up, they would be working the phone lines pretty hard. So those are some things to consider with that. And like I said, with Atlanta, wherever that ends up being, cornerback, I think heavier outcome than is being given credit for right now.
All right, next bet we're going to talk about has to do with the quarterbacks. You mentioned it's very day one heavy quarterback class to start the draft. We expect it to go some combination of Caleb Williams and then Jaden Daniels and Drake May. We don't know the order of 2 and 3 yet. We'll find out the night of the draft. JJ McCarthy we expect to be in there, but there's a number of the 4.5 for the number of quarterbacks to be taken in the first round. We've done some mocks where Bo Nix is snuck in there, but I want to get your take on there. The number's 4.5. You going over or under this?
We haven't done any mocks where Bo Nix has snuck in there where I have made this selection.
That is fair.
I will have to believe it to see it. I am fading the 4.5 number, especially at those juice odds that the market is giving me right now live. You can get plus 154 on going under the 4.5 number. I'm taking that all day. Maybe Penix goes at the end of the first round, or maybe Sean Payton panic drafts Bo Nix. And frankly, as a Vikings fan who lived through Bountygate, the one shot that I had, that Vikings fans had in their lifetime to win the Super Bowl, would be hilarious and would give me personal joy. But again, I would have to believe it to see it. Those guys are, in particular, Bo Nix, are not first round caliber players. every process, and I know that they have obviously been discussed ad nauseum, and you do see them in mock drafts, particularly elsewhere in the industry. And there's other people that say that they're first rounders and yada yada. But we see this every single process, particularly around this time where it gets very close to the draft, and you'll see respected reporters say, "Oh, they're they're not going to fall beneath here. This is where this team is super interested, and if they get to this point, this team could be interested in trading to the very end of the first round, and yada yada." The guy last year who was Penix or Nix in this scenario was Hendon Hooker.
Right.
There is that guy, every single year. Could there be a team that makes what, in my opinion, would be an egregious mistake? Sure. Uh, Sometimes that happens. My Vikings over a decade ago did it with a guy named Christian Ponder, but it would be a fireable offense if it happens, and I would have to believe it to see it. I don't think a front office ends up doing that, and so I'm going to fade that number, particularly if you're going to give me a little bit better than 1.5 to 1.
I gotta say, I agree with you 100% on your evaluation there. Let's talk about the wide receivers. There's a lot of them in here. The number is 6.5 for the first round. Would you go over or under that number?
I'm going under that 6.5. I feel pretty good about this one. The number is juiced up there at 6.5 because the betting market has been told all process by people like myself that this wide receiver class is awesome. And they have not been misled. That is the truth. This wide receiver class is absolutely nasty. But the thing is it's at the very top, of course, with the 3 mega studs right there at the top. And then that is also speaking to the depth of it, which is going to have the effect of negating the possibility that there will be 7 or more receivers taken in the first round, which is going to push this thing under. Because you have that 3-dimensional chess of the decision making of the people on the clock of why are you going to take a Troy Franklin or a Keon Coleman or a Xavier Legette or a guy that we're going to talk about in a second that I'm not the biggest fan of, but we'll get into that in a second. At the end of the first round, and a couple other guys that you could toss out there. When instead in round 2 or even in round 3, you can take a dude at that position that you can project can immediately come in and start from day one. Whereas in the slot you're picking at the end of the first round in the latter half of day one, you can instead you can go to another position where it drops off quicker, and you can take a dude that will start immediately. Because again, the 3-dimensional chess thing, that's the scenario where you can get 2 immediate starters as opposed to 1. That you look around at these other position groups, they drop off a shelf way quicker. Wide receiver is the one where you can get immediate starters way deeper in this draft. So you're not going to reach up for them. It would be another sort of egregious decision, even if you can argue that I have 7 first-round grades on receivers. I wouldn't argue until I was blue in the face against that idea in theory. It's just when you start stacking the value of the different positions, it's like, okay, some of these other position groups, they fall off a shelf so quickly. And if you're a GM and you're looking over your different position groups, and we have 4 other position groups where we have acute needs, you need to address those, because if you don't, you will be in a very hairy position later on in the draft.
It seems like I think the number of people want to bet the over on this, Thor. It feels like they're looking at the board and they're seeing the top 3 guys, but then they're seeing a lot of teams with need, like the Buffalo Bills, like the Kansas City Chiefs. You add in 2 more teams, all of a sudden you're over this number. So I think that's why people are looking so much on the over. But to your point, it's the depth that might allow you to be a little bit more patient. Now, one guy that plays like a wide receiver, but he's actually a tight end, is Brock Bowers. A lot of discussion of where he might go, how early he might go. The number for him is at 12.5 in terms of draft spot. You want to go over or under that?
I'm gonna go under the 12.5. I just mentioned the Jets. If the Jets are not able to engineer that scenario to get up for Romadunze, I do absolutely buy the smoke of Brock Bowers. I do not believe that is I think that is legitimate, and it makes all the sense in the world to me. People, you hear this stuff of like, oh, it's a tight end and yada yada, and the positional value. you can't really think of Brock Bowers as a tight end. And you also cannot conflate him with Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts was like the downtown, seam stretcher dude, whatever. Brock Bowers is, you move him all around the formation and you manufacture the ball to him shorter on, and you can do all kinds of different things with him. Brock Bowers, so he was only on the Georgia campus for 3 years. All 3 years he led the team in receiving. The team only lost 2 games those 3 seasons. They won the national title twice. Both rosters were replete with NFL receivers. When he stepped onto campus, that team had George Pickens, they had Adonai Mitchell, they had Lad Mcconkey. They were stacked. Brock Bowers was the number 1 receiver on that team that won a national title as a true freshman. Brock Bowers was a first-team All-American 3 times. He was a John Mackey Award winner 2 times. And it's not only that, folks. Kirby Smart, who is as straight-laced as they come, not known for hyperbole, said that if Georgia had shifted Brock Bowers to running back, he would have been
that he would have been their best one, right?
He would have been their best running back. And you think like, that's clearly absurd. Brock Bowers is 6'3", 245. There's no way that could have been the case. But when he carried the ball, because there was times where they sort of used him as like the Deebo Samuel of tight ends, and in some high leverage spots, they would do like end arounds or at the goal line. They would do some fun stuff.
Jet sweeps kind of stuff. Yeah.
He averaged like over 10 yards a carry. So you can do crazy unconventional things with him. You can't think of him as a tight end. He's just the guy that he's a yardage getter. And it's like, well, sure, is he undersized for a tight end? But he's not a tight end. He is elephantine for his athletic profile for a yardage getter. And that's what he is. You just move around the formation, and when you do it, the defense has to tip their intentions to you. That's what he is. You line him up outside, line him up in the slot, line him up, in line, line him up. You can line him up in the backfield as a single back if you want, a couple snaps a game just to confuse the heck out of the defense. Like he's the dude for the offensive coordinator, where he just screws around with the defensive coordinator on the other side. It's like a game where he is just frustrating the other dude the entire time. And then Bowers is just doing damage the entire time, as he did from day one for the most dominant collegiate program we had over the last 3 years.
All right, you teased this earlier, so I'm going to let you kind of take it from here. There was a wide receiver that you are lower on than consensus. Let's talk about him and how we can make money off of it in the NFL draft and wagering.
Yeah, so we'll have to apologize to the viewing audience first that the show wasn't 4 days ago, or immediately when the slot props came out, because let's just say that the sportsbooks made a mistake with this guy, that the betting market and my sharks out there immediately made them pay for with the biggest of hammers. Just a wave of money came in. Adonai Mitchell, his slot, you don't see movement like this in slot props this quickly. Opened at 16.5. Within a couple of days, he had been bet up to 27.5, which is where he sits now. Talking about the Texas receiver at 27.5 now, so has moved over 10 slots up from the open again, and only a matter of a couple of days. Even at 27.5, that is where we currently sit as we talk to you guys now at minus 120 odds. That is the advice I'm going to give you guys. Again, present odds. I am still going over that number. Adonai Mitchell on my draft board is wide receiver 13. I see him as a round 3 prospect.
Wow, 3 even. Wow.
And of course, Adonai Mitchell is going to go higher than that in the NFL, higher than round 3 in the NFL draft. Not a fan of his game, obviously. He is a loafer on concepts that go the other way. He does not change directions very well. His one special sauce of the downtown speed, obviously, that is why people were a fan of him during the pre-draft process. 6'2", 205 with the 4.3 wheels, and then he had the great RAS because of that different stuff. But it's build-up speed. His 10-yard split was equivalent to several guys in this class that ran in the low to mid 4.5s. So he needs a runway in front of him to get to. Once he has that runway in front of him, And that's when down the field he starts running faster than anybody, but he needs that runway. His collegiate receiving production, it was entirely built off of games where he would have 2 to 3 explosive plays. The rest of that's why you saw last year on this Texas team that had a really good passing offense. It was like 8, 9 games he had less than 30 receiving yards because he's the Dave Kingman of receiving prospects, where you either get a home run or you get a strikeout. That baseball illusion was for you,
I
Joey
got the
P.
baseball reference. I appreciate that. I
Yeah,
don't know how many of the audience did, but Dave Kingman, go look it up. Big slugger, all or nothing would be the way to describe him.
all or nothing. That is what you get from him. And then the other utility that for an NFL team is that the opposing defense, you're going to have to keep 2 high safeties because you do have to respect his ability to pop the top. But I see him as more of like a DJ Shark type. Where the prototypical wide receiver too, I absolutely do not see the upside that some other analysts out there have depicted. You certainly did not see it the past couple years in college during his collegiate career. When he had the opportunity, I brought him up before. He was there on campus with Brock Bowers. That was a team that was certainly trying to win and was winning. They won the national championship. We're winning the national championship twice. They were going to other dudes, and then Adonai Mitchell obviously went to Texas, and they were going to other dudes. He did hit some dingers, and he'll hit some dingers in the NFL, but you will be going elsewhere for your efficiency. I still think that Adonai Mitchell is going to fall into the top of the second round. That's where I think he ends up going. That typically that's where you see the top dudes go. And that's what I think Adonai Mitchell is, and that's where I think he ends up going in the NFL draft.
All right, we got a few picks left here for the NFL draft. Best bets here. Let's talk about Turner. Over 9.5. That is where you are next. Why is that?
Yeah, we brought up Dallas Turner before, and my supposition that Atlanta is not settled that away. And obviously, people know from the mock drafts and everything like that during the entire process, all the offensive guys that are going to go at the top of the board. So this is right around here is where the first defender is going to go. That is why the sports books have set Dallas Turner's over under slot prop at 9.5. I'm fading Dallas Turner, as I mentioned before. So I'm going over that 9.5. I'm perfectly comfortable laying the minus 120 juice on that.
All right, we talked about Bo Nix earlier. So you and I agree he should not go in the first round. Doesn't mean he won't go in the first round, but we're talking about where he might land. The number right now that it's set for him is 35.5. That's the pick number. Do you want to go over or under that one for Bo Nix?
Yeah, certainly going over the Bo Nix one. Mentioned was going under the 4.5 quarterbacks in the first round with Bo Nix. I wish we could do the what's it called when you in the modified line that you can do with college football. You change it so then you get the juice odds. I wish I could do that with the draft slot props and then push it back and then get an enormous juice on it the other way.
Because the alternate line, so to speak.
Alternate line. Thank you.
You're welcome. I
should.
I don't know why there isn't more of that. There should be. You know what? As we get closer to draft day, you might see some specials pop up or some abilities to do that on certain spots. So keep an eye.
I hope we get more prospects as well.
There's a ton of stuff that I feel like the last 48 hours or so things pop up, and then a lot of specials pop up too. So, stay keen to that, keep your eyes and ears open for all of that. Use the Betting Pros app, but also, make sure you follow us on social media too, because we'll be, trying to get all that information out to people as much as we can. But again, Bo Nix, numbers at 35.5, that's reasonable, but you got to look at the teams that are looking for quarterback around that range too.
Yeah, and there's been the connection between, for instance, Bo Nix and Sean Payton, and desperation is a stinky cologne, and certainly the Broncos are desperate with their quarterback situation. I certainly get that. But the Broncos also are capped out, and they have very little draft equity. And as I mentioned before, it would be egregious just looking at Bo Nix's the film for sure, but even looking just at the traditional profile of a prospect like this, the elevated age, the struggles he had earlier in his career, and the way in which he accrued those counting stats. If you look into that, if you look at where the yardage was coming from, and you look at where the accuracy got juiced up, cough, cough. Look at the percentage of passes that came behind the line of scrimmage and within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. You'll see, and look at the percentage of the yards that came from yak yardage from the guys that he was throwing to. You'll start to see. And then again, from a quarterback prospect at the elevated age. And then when you look at the film, you start to see some other things. It appears that the Oregon offensive system was working around some of the more unsavory aspects of Bo Nix's game that we saw at Auburn that I think will crop up in the NFL if a system is not tailored around that in the same way, which will also have the effect of taking away any explosive element whatsoever from the offense that he would be playing in at the next level, which would also have the effect of neutering that offense. You would absolutely not have a contender. That's not a guy that goes in the first round. It's also not a guy that goes in the top half of the second. Would definitely be fading that. And vis-a-vis the Broncos, that scenario, assuming it's not just this enormous panic, whatever, you trade down, the smart thing, you would trade down, try to accrue some draft equity, which you currently do not have, to try to plug some more holes on that roster that's decimated, that needs it, that you don't have cap room to otherwise fill those holes. And then add, and get some cheap roster cogs. Because, again, fill out some of that draft equity you don't have, and you don't have the cap space. Augment that.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to me. Michael Penix, so far in every mock draft we've done, Thor, he has ended up with the Raiders at 44. Now, the over-under for him is at 32.5. That seems like a lock for the over, no?
I'm going over on that as well. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the 32.5 is just nodding to what they're saying is Michael Penix
he's a day two guy. Round? That's what they're saying.
Exactly.
And he is.
Yeah. And Penix, Penix for me is slightly different than Bo Nix. On my board, Bo Nix is a third rounder. I do think Nix ends up maybe in the second round somewhere. Penix, I think by the talent could go early second round. The first round thing would still surprise me because in the profile, there's multiple different things that I think are going to scare teams when they are on the clock, or in the past couple of months when they have been discussing this. The obvious one that people talk about is the 4 straight season-ending injuries when Michael Penix was at Indiana. Michael Penix then did not run at Washington, like out of the pocket I'm talking about. But then when he went to the pre-draft process, he tested as the great athlete. And then, which then people were like, oh, he's a good athlete. And he of course has the really good arm. So then you saw his stock started to go up a little bit again. The thing that people need to keep in mind, though, is there is a reason that he never left the pocket at Washington. It's not because he had a dippy coaching staff. In fact, he had one of the best play callers that we have had in college football the last 30 years. And it was the guy who shepherded him initially at Indiana, Kalen DeBoer, when Michael Penix came out of high school as the dual threat guy. When at Indiana, he was running around, there was that play against Penn State when they upset them during the COVID season. He reached over the goal line, and scored, and, all that sort of stuff. The reason why is because when Michael Penix was doing all that running around stuff early on at Indiana, that's when he was getting injured. And my theory is that Kalen DeBoer told Michael Penix when he followed him to Washington, Michael, we need you in the pocket. You can't be leaving anymore, because if you get injured, it's going to be very bad for our team. We need you staying healthy. And then the one other thing with Michael Penix's game, you can see this in the statistics. You can also see it on the film. The more he's pushed off his spot, the more his feet are moving, the more his accuracy begins to depreciate. It's something like 10% drops off his accuracy percentage if his feet are even shuffling whatsoever. And it's more like 15 to 20 when he is outright scrambling. So you have those two different things. So the whole point being that athleticism, I'm not sure that is a thing that is usable in the NFL if you want to keep him healthy.
No, but footwork's certainly something teachable you can work on. That's for sure. You can't make a guy more athletic, but you could certainly teach him better footwork, especially in circumstances of the NFL where he's going to need that because the pass rush is going to be very ferocious there. It's not
sure,
like playing football.
But Joe, I will say his mechanics. So there is a lot of upper body motion in his throwing motion, and Penix's arm talent.
Oh, it's
very good.
Tremendous.
Awesome. Like the ball, it just shoots out of his hand. Like that part of it is unimpeachable about his thing. but he is an extremely unorthodox thrower where it is mostly upper body. And what he does with the lower body, it's like, I think of it like a sniper where it's like he keeps it like set, but he doesn't use the lower body as much, as far as rocking back and stepping in. He just likes to keep the feet totally set. And like I said, when it's moving at all, it has the effect of depreciating the accuracy with all that unrepeatable upper body wonky motion that he has. That you see, like the placement can be off because that upper body motion is non-repeatable and all the funk in it. And so that's what you see with it. I'm not sure how much of that is workable. If it was over his 6 years on campus, I think Kalen DeBoer would have solved that puzzle by now.
Perhaps we shall see. Hopefully, wherever he lands, they maybe can get the best out of him. Last is Ladd McConkey, a guy who's been just going up draft boards constantly lately. So he's been flying up all over the place. That number for him is up to 34.5. You want to go over or under this, as again, the buzz continues to be strong with this one.
Yeah, I mentioned that I'm fading the 6.5 receiver number. Ladd McConkey, though, is the one receiver, especially at this 34.5. You get a couple more bullets on you get the first couple slots of the second round on it. I'm going to go under this one. I love Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey, I might be the highest dude in the industry on Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey is my wide receiver 4.
Wow. Okay.
Huge fan of Ladd McConkey's game. And I absolutely could see a team like, I don't know how much connection is out there on this. This is just a conviction of mine. I think he'd be a perfect fit for the Buffalo Bills. You don't typically think of Ladd McConkey as a dude that would be an analogous one-to-one replacement fit for a Stephon Diggs. I think he would be perfect for that. Ladd McConkey, people do not give Ladd McConkey credit for it. This guy could absolutely be a long-term outside starting receiver in the NFL. I believe he could be. He certainly was on those dominant Georgia teams I was just talking about, played almost 80% of his snaps in college on the 2 national title teams on the outside. That was a 12 personnel offense. And he gets separation at will, almost better than anyone in this class. He is so natural at it. He was so good at it. In fact, when Debro and I and our buddy Mayer were down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, the first day, Ladd McConkey was destroying defensive backs so bad in one-on-one drills that it evoked Tank Dell from the year before in the one-on-one drills where they were holding Tank Dell out of the route breaks. And then the next day, people were holding Tank Dell after he destroyed them on the Tuesday.
Yeah.
With Ladd McConkey, they just started playing off him. No one wanted to get close to him. They were just seeding the early we'll give you the freebie completion, and then we'll just sort of mime tackle you after that because they were getting embarrassed by him. Mm-hmm. That's how easy Ladd McConkey separates from him. If you hit him on the hands, he is going to get a little bit of yak yards for you after that as well. He would be a guy for that Buffalo receiving corps after the Diggs trade and whatever that badly needs fortification right now. He would so greatly help that out. So just one example of a team that potentially could go there. But even at the top of the second, Carolina obviously, had traded for Deontay Johnson, someone who very much in this vein, they are looking for guys that get open.
Patriots are looking for a guy too. Certainly,
the Patriots.
There's a few teams right at the very top of that second round. So I'm with you on this one.
You're looking at teams that are sitting dead red on a guy exactly like Ladd McConkey. And if people out there don't think that they're talking about exactly like a guy like this, a guy that gets open more than 7-11, you're kidding yourself.
There you have it, everybody. Hopefully all of these bets hit. And of course, if you want to bet smarter, not harder, download the Betting Pros app. And don't forget to join us for our live coverage of the NFL Draft right here on Fantasy Pros, our main site. Again, we will be live. Subscribe to Fantasy Pros if you haven't already. And of course, set that notifications, ring that bell till it goes ding so you are joining us live for night 1 and night 2 of the NFL Draft. Thor will be there. I will be there. All of our rowdy friends will be there. We want you to be there too. And don't forget to subscribe to Betting Pros as well as we continue to break down the best bets you could possibly make in the NFL Draft. And check out Thor's big board, which is going to be available for you over on Betting Pros as well. That'll do it for us.
500 player comps.
500 player comps. That's it. God, you're so lazy these days. Go check that out at bettingpros.com. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Thor Nystrom, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.